Tournament arcs have become a long-running staple in anime. They have become a great way to introduce characters, highlight some uniquely fun fights and interactions, as well as serving as a fantastic tool to move the plot forward. YuYu Hakusho's Dark Tournament has long been held as the gold standard for what makes a tournament so special. But what about it exactly makes it head and shoulders above the rest? Well, for starters, unlike so many other instances where the characters are excited to fight for a prize or a glamorous title, our characters are being forced to attend as special guests at the whim of the arc's big bad, Toguro. At this point in the series, our main cast of characters have mostly begrudgingly worked together because they all had the same goals that aligned with one another. But now, they must enter as a team into a situation where everything will be going against them. The tension for this tournament is set right off the bat, with the stakes being win or die. It's as simple as that. This isn't about having fun, but purely a fight for survival. Also, as previously mentioned, the people behind the scenes of the Dark Tournament are going to be throwing everything at the newly founded Team Urameshi. Unbalanced brackets, handicaps on which members can fight and which can't, interference from outside the ring, purposely setting up strong teams with buys right before they face them. If it seems underhanded, then expect our group to have it thrown at them. Speaking of that team, they are known as Team Urameshi, and it consists of Yusuke, Kuwabara, Hiei, Kurama, and the Masked Fighter, who is later revealed to be Yusuke's master, Genkai, a former winner of the tournament. What this massive 40-episode arc does best is allowing every single one of them to go through tremendous personal growth as the story progresses. Hiei learns to control a deadly powerful technique and begrudgingly to trust in his team, something that has always seemed foreign to him. Kurama goes through absolute hell in some of his fights, both mentally and physically, but is rewarded with a way to recapture his lost fox form that was sealed away years ago. Genkai is given chances to show why she is such a revered fighter, and continue her mentorship over Yusuke and subsequently the rest of Team Urameshi, as well as getting the chance to come to terms with Toguro, the man she once considered her friend and lover. Kuwabara has always been a fan favorite of the series, but this tournament is littered with amazing character moments for the lovable idiot. He suffers multiple, and I do mean multiple, humiliating losses at nearly every turn, but continues to show off his resilience in battle and ultimately is able to come up clutch in huge moments, as well as having one of the show's most impactful moments at the time. Then we have Yusuke, who continues to grow at an astounding rate, not only in power, but in his philosophy about life. Yusuke wants to be peaceful and enjoy what he has, but he must sacrifice to get what he wants. And in the end, he goes through literal torture so as to gain even greater strength. Even minor combatants throughout the tournament get a chance to show up personality, backstory, and development. The biggest, though, has to be Toguro, who could have just been some muscle-bound monster simply wanting to test his strength, but we slowly found out about the person he was before he indulged in his power fantasies. He becomes a more sympathetic villain as the story winds to its conclusion, as we get to see the insight of a man tortured by his past mistakes and follies. The arc takes great care in having a fast pace, yet still giving time to let characters grow during and in between battles, making its character moments some of the highlights rather than filler between the action-packed battles. And oh boy, do we get a ton of action-packed battles, with things being structured so that Team Urameshi will always be at an inherent disadvantage in any given round. Earlier rounds are devised to separate the team as much as possible and allow the opposing teams as much free will to mess with Team Urameshi's heads. Togashi is at his best here as a mangaka and storyteller, taking what has worked in previous arcs and building upon those style of fights. What makes this section of the show even better, though, is that during the 90s, you had a very limited pool of voice actors used for any given show. So, when the Dark Tournament started adding loads of new faces nearly every episode, the showrunners and actors had to get a little creative with how they made characters sound, and the results added some much needed charm to the English dub of the show.
This is ridiculous! I know better right when I saw you, my love! Don't I look muscly?
See, they're all pointy up and wiggling unlike they were before. Getting that way when I'm happy or excited, and I haven't been either in a very long time.
Now, after going through a hellish gauntlet of fights and training, the finals of the Dark Tournament truly get a chance to stand out as its own masterpiece. Each fight is set up through the story being told so far, with our core group of fighters getting a chance to showcase everything that they have gained throughout the course of the tournament. But in the end, Yusuke against Toguro was where the story was always going to have its big conclusion. While some may dislike the quote-unquote visual limitations the 90 has when it comes to martial arts-centered anime, YuYu Hakusho makes up for it with its story beats and continued use of spectacular music and giant energy blasts. It also happens to be a fight that has an interesting twist to it, because while he doesn't necessarily want to lose on purpose, all Toguro seeks at this point is a chance to use his full unbridled power, and this leads to him basically teaching Yusuke throughout the fight. When it seems like he can't be pushed to go any further, Toguro takes the situation in his own hands and forces Yusuke to transform himself mid-battle, through what, at the moment, is the peak of the arc, with the apparent death of his friend Kuwabara, leading to an ultimately satisfying and devastating conclusion. Toguro, in death, is able to find solace in being surpassed by his one-time friend's student, and ultimately is willing to atone for the sins he has committed, truly making him one of anime's most confounding and well-thought-out antagonistic forces. So now that we have covered some of the things that make this tournament stand out so well, it's only fair, and in the spirit of a tournament, to see what other great tournament arcs have to offer, and how I personally feel they fall short in some way when standing toe-to-toe with the Dark Tournament. First up, we have the OG Dragon Ball franchise and its trio of fantastic Tenkaichi Budokai. These tournaments offer a great mix of storytelling, slapstick comedy, impressive martial arts displays, and became the breakout arcs for many Dragon Ball fans. Their greatest shortcoming, however, happens to be one of the Dark Tournament's greatest strengths: the stakes. Not everything needs to be about life and death, obviously, and the spirit of fun and competition can easily stand alone. But even when Dragon Ball introduced bigger stakes to its tournaments, such as Piccolo Jr. vs. Goku, it never felt as dire as, say, a Toguro vs. Yusuke finale, which had earned that status through 60+ chapters of building tension. It isn't everything, but when you're nitpicking and comparing things, the tension of the Dark Tournament stands well over the Tenkaichi Budokais of Dragon Ball. Then you have the children's tournaments, as I like to call them, from Yu-Gi-Oh's Duelist Kingdom and Battle City to the likes of Pokemon's League tournaments and Masters 8, with shows like Beyblade stuck in between. These arcs tend to be amongst the most hyped up in all of anime and tend to be the biggest highlights of any given season or generation of these shows. Because as fun as these shows can be, the storytelling is usually the weakest point. While not bad by any means, you're going against a juggernaut of a story that has the benefit of already grabbing the audience's attentions from previous arcs, as well as allowing us to see into the psyche of our core group of characters as they struggle with obstacles constantly put in their ways. I love seeing Yugi draw and stare longingly at the one card he needed to pull every other episode as much as the next person, or Ash and Pikachu pulling out insane wins with plot armor, or whatever the hell happens in Beyblade, but in the end, they don't compare to the Dark Tournament. Lastly, for this exercise, you have the two tournaments many anime fans will argue most often against Yu Yu Hakusho in Naruto's Chunin exam and My Hero Academia's UA Sports Festival. Right off the bat, both shows have a unique advantage that many other shows don't get. They each have these unique set of challenges leading up to the tournament down the line. Naruto had a multitude of tests that challenged ninjas' wits, fighting abilities, and eventually how they work together as a team, with all this culminating in a tournament near the exam's conclusion. Similarly, My Hero Academia and the UA Sports Festival go over a multitude of tests to eventually land on a final bracket for students who will battle one-on-one to determine an eventual winner. Both arcs have so much going for them from start to end, but the greatest weakness that both deal with might stem from what many consider their greatest strengths: the peak. The peak of these arcs often overshadow the rest of the tournament. The Chunin exam is widely remembered for Rock Lee versus Gaara, one of Naruto's best battles even till this day, and the Sports Festival is full of good battles. But Deku vs Todoroki stands above them with its intense visuals and eventual mental breakthroughs for both characters. Calling a positive a negative feels, well, nitpicky at first glance, but genuinely, as someone that hasn't seen either arc in a while, I kind of struggled for a moment to really come up with any other truly standout moments from the tournament phases of these arcs. Both have wonderful moments throughout their tournament arc, but the tournaments themselves really just have these huge moments and some others littered throughout. The Dark Tournament, on the other hand, has standout bouts every single round, with these fights being part of the greater story told rather than a means to advance to the next round. Such was the case at times for the previously mentioned tournaments. Overall, the biggest thing for me that makes the Dark Tournament stand out so much compared to these other anime is really how every character interaction and battle has that type of narrative weight behind it, and those downtime moments between fights is chock full of information and development for things later down the road. Some shows might be more your fancy, they might have better fights to you, they might even have a story that you like better. That's what the point of liking anime is. Everybody's allowed to have their own opinions. For me, however, this was the arc that truly got me hooked on anime and shonen battle style shows as a kid. And now, as an adult, it still holds up for me as the best tournament arc in all of anime. I've been Summers, Baka to Basics, and I'll see you the next time class is in session.